For instance, coming straight from, let me check my notes here, at the Lauren Gunn, noted longtime pals and just future backcourt mates, Russell Westbrook and Luka Doncic. Many people are saying, hey, exit stage left, Jalen Brunson, enter stage right, Russell Westbrook. And the fit, the situation, all seamless. The only caveat is that we wish Rick Carlisle was still the coach to try and coach those 2 point guards together. Lauren, what happened here? What's going on with the Russell Westbrook Mav stuff?
So, I mean, first, if you're following the Mavs or even care about the Mavs, you have to acknowledge that their pathways and moves and options are very limited, especially given the draft asset situation, just where they're at as of right now. And even the contracts, primarily the contracts more so than the draft picks. But the Russell Westbrook thing honestly just provides them a path to making a move for Russell Westbrook, gives them an opportunity to reset financially. I would actually be shocked if Russell Westbrook ever played a game in a Mavericks uniform. That's where I'm at, even though they clearly need point guard depth. I think some of it goes back to Mark Cuban saying, Russell Westbrook, you are not a superstar in his prime in OKC. And I think some of it goes back to just where the team is at. But at the same time, you've got Jared Dudley and you've got Jason Kidd who have relationships with Russell Westbrook. And so it's kind of like, okay, well, could Russ potentially look at, well, let's say, could the Mavs front office look at this as an opportunity to financially reset? And is that one of their best paths moving forward? And does Russell Westbrook look at this as an opportunity to kind of go back to, honestly, a similar situation to Washington, where he could really kind of take control of his narrative and kind of just say, hey, I am a really solid player in the NBA and I do deserve to be on many rosters. Where are they at with that? And right now, it would just really floor me to see everything aligned to where he would welcome coming to the Mavericks, because the reality is he wouldn't start. And I just don't know that that's something that he's on board with right now.
That's interesting. I'm growing more to the possibility that Russell Westbrook does not play in the NBA this year. I think that that's something that folks need to prepare for, where I think he's going down the Melo track, where he has not adjusted to how the league sees him now. And he still sees himself as like, I mean, it was not that long ago that we had the quote unquote big three with Melo, Paul George, and Russell Westbrook, that was a trio that could, hey, maybe win the title. And Melo was that final piece with that group. And then things got really bad. All the memes, they were really hard on Melo because of all the misses and all the open threes that he had in OKC that just were not falling. And then he's out of the league. And then there's this pushback from a lot of players where it's like, hey, there's no excuse for Carmelo Anthony not to be on a roster right now. And broadly speaking, that was true. Is that, yes, Carmelo Anthony should be on a roster somewhere. But it took Carmelo Anthony to see himself as an 8th or 9th guy to get on a roster where it was like, oh, those days are gone and I have to change how I see myself, change how I'm not that guy anymore. And teams everywhere don't see me as that guy anymore. And that's really, really hard for former all-stars. It's really hard for guys who have just been big time players in this league for over a decade. Like, that's a really tough adjustment, and we make it seem like it's a lot easier. I think Westbrook's about to hit that same point where I do think he's going to get moved. I don't think he plays another game in Lakerland. And like you said, Lauren, even if he gets moved to somebody like Dallas to clear up some cap space and clear up the books a little bit for Dallas, he doesn't play there. They're trying to get in the top 4 in the West. They're not trying to split possessions between Luka Doncic and Russell Westbrook next year. They're not doing that. And I don't think Luka would want to sign on for that. And you look around the league and he just strikes me as someone who is going to see, like, I want a promise of a starting spot. I want a promise of being the high usage guy on whatever team I sign with. And I just don't think he's going to be thrilled with the options. I mean, John Wall is kind of in the same situation now, and we'll see what happens in Clipperland. But I think it might be a year away, and then we get the talk of like, why is Russell Westbrook down on the roster? He could help Miami. He could help whoever as a third guard. And it's like, well, he doesn't see himself as Derrick Rose on the Knicks yet. And once he sees himself in that capacity, then he gets on a roster, and then he could be valuable. Because I do think there is value in Russell Westbrook at that kind of second, like at third guy off the bench that just, 12 to 14 minutes, maybe swing a playoff game if you need just the spark and whoever you have going. Like, there are scenarios where Russell Westbrook still has value. I just think it requires Russell Westbrook to go through a really hard transition from I am not a star player in this league anymore to I am just fighting for my life. It's kind of like Allen Iverson was going through the same stuff after Denver. And I think that's where we're headed. What do you think, Corban?
As a Westbrook fanish kind of guy, I am torn. I think that he is heading that way, yes. But like, let's not forget, even Melo got 5 games of Houston before they realized it didn't work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, I think that probably his time with the Lakers is done. I agree with you completely on that. I don't know if like he's done. I think he finds another team. It doesn't work out, and then he hits that Melo moment. I do agree with you there. And maybe, like you said, maybe it's an Allen Iverson moment because Melo like had to change if you want to get back in the league. Does Russ feel he's in that part? Russ, part of the reason that makes him so great or has made him great in the past is that he doesn't conform to, what folks have told him to do throughout his career. Turnover prone, out of control, way too many shots, yada, yada, yada. Like, he has been consistent in his soul-minded drive to play the way that he plays. And thanks to, moments of, he has had great skill, obviously superior athleticism for most of his career. He's been able to get by on that. Well, now it's time to pay the piper, and maybe he doesn't want to do that. And if that is the case, well then, yeah, it's probably a wrap. It's funny, when I saw the question, I was like, oh, this is going to be easy. I'm going to pull up Jalen Brunson's stats from last year, 2021, 2022. I know 2020, 2021. I know that Russ had a triple-double 2020, 2021, so I'm going to just line them up, just state them. I was going to say the facts. It didn't. It really didn't. Russ had the triple-double, and Jalen Brunson shot better across the board. Somehow, Russ shot more threes and shot 9% worse than Jalen Brunson did. It was a 40% three-point shooter 2020, 2021. Point being, it could work, right? It could even work if, let's say, you staggered it. But like Lauren said, staggering the primary ball handling responsibility between Luka and Russ means that, no, Russ is coming off the bench, like you said. Is Russ at that stage you want to do that? I mean, no indication has been given so far that he is, right? He can't be a shooting guard, so he can't start alongside Luka. That's something went terribly wrong. And that's the option. That's all, folks. So, yeah, I mean, from a financial perspective, that I think is great for Dallas moving forward. With that money comes off the books, some flexibility, I'd imagine. And like the relationships that Russ already had is helpful. But I will push back and say this: Russ has had tremendous relationships with LeBron and AD, and we saw what happened. So it's kind of on him and the mirror at this point, in my opinion. But I hope.
Corban, what would you guess as someone who watches every Laker game? What would you guess without looking? What Russ's usage rate last year was?
26.
So that's closer to Anthony Davis, who was 24.9, right?
Oh,
that's
more?
the 94th percentile in the NBA for a big.
Okay.
Russ was 30.4% usage rate. That is an MVP type level usage rate. That's Trey territory. Russell Westbrook, the jump, he is 33. I don't think people are ready. Like, he is going to have to cut that usage rate to 18 to 19% to be on a roster and to be a productive player in this league at this point. And that is a huge ask for Westbrook to go from 30%, where he is still so much of what LA did last year was run through Westbrook. And that guy, because it has worked for so long, to take the ball out of his hands as much as you're going to have to. Like, him becoming Bruce Brown for what Bruce Brown has done for the Nets makes a lot of sense for a lot of teams around the league. Like, the silliest one is, and Darvin Ham doesn't really have a choice, and it's not fair to Darvin, where it's like, I've coached Drew Holiday for years in Milwaukee, and they do have similar frames. They really do. They're wired completely differently. There's no similarities in their makeup. Drew came into the league as a defense-minded player. He is always defense. He's a much better shooter. Like, yes, theoretically speaking, that would be great. But Russell Westbrook's 33. Now, if you were drafting Russell Westbrook and you're like, hey, I want you to be Drew Holiday out of UCLA, hey, maybe that's a possibility. that ship has sailed. So as much as that would be cool and make a lot of sense for Lakerland, that's not going to happen when Russell Westbrook's turning 34 this year. I'm not about it. But Lauren, I'm also curious because this was something I remember the last time you were on the pod was that the Mavs were kind of like they kind of had to bring Brunson back because they couldn't do anything else. There's no other option for Dallas. Is kind of have to keep running with this core. And since on the pod, Brunson signed with the Knicks. And some people are saying that there was some behind the scenes stuff. Some people might suggest that his father being on the coaching staff might play a role. There might be some front office stuff there, but that seems like a stretch to me. I think it was purely basketball on the court reasons. And that's the only thing that makes sense to me, Lauren. But in terms of Christian Wood also entering the frame, which I don't think any of us really saw coming, that's also happened. So when you're looking at the state of this roster, does it make a lot more sense now? Are you surprised they've been able to do what they've been able to do? And how does losing Brunson affect what they're going to look like next year?
Yeah, so I mean, the roster and the additions that they've made with losing Jalen Brunson, obviously bringing in Christian Wood and even bringing in someone like JaVale McGee, they haven't had a true rim running 7-foot center the way JaVale McGee will operate in the system in a very long time. And so the team is going to function very differently than last year. Obviously, losing Jalen Brunson, not ideal. That I personally believe is going to hurt them more so in the long term than the short term. I think next year, between having Christian Wood, having JaVale McGee as this somewhat paint presence, and then getting even Tim Hardaway Jr. back to add to your depth off the bench and your points production, I think as far as offensive points production, they're going to be at somewhat of a net zero with losing Jalen Brunson and having someone like Spencer Dinwiddie to step up into that starting lineup and be that secondary playmaker. I think they'll kind of find themselves in an okay spot in that regard. But in terms of long-term options,